I think so, because we are at the top of the food chain.
Animals eat other animals.
Because it's part of the food chain.
You know, there is a food chain, there's a food chain, that's a food chain.
What I want to do is look at a couple of subjects, a couple of topics, and find out if they're true or false. There's a lot of information out there that is actually a myth. There's a lot of ideas surrounding food and about veganism that just simply aren't true. They're false. And I want to sort of clear up a few of those. So what I'm going to start with is the food chain. A lot of people make up the excuse or give the reason that they still eat dead animals that have been killed young or that have been artificially inseminated because there's a food chain. And when you really look into it, it's not what everybody really thinks.
I think so, because we are at the top of the food chain.
Animals eat other animals.
Because it's part of the food chain.
You know, there is a food chain, there's a food chain, that's a food chain.
I used to think there was a food chain. I used to think that, you know, the animals that we ate were part of the food chain and it all kind of makes sense. But when you really look into it, it's a bit different than that. One way of looking at it is the trophic level. So this is a scientific method of working out where organisms are on the trophic level, and the explanation of it is this. The trophic level of an organism is the number of steps it is from the start of the chain. A food chain starts at trophic level 1 with primary producers such as plants, can move to herbivores at level 2, carnivores at level 3 or higher, and typically finishes with apex predators at level 4 or 5. If you look around, there's lots of like diagrams of food chains that can be found quite quickly. But actually, the reality is that most human beings on planet Earth use shops or supermarkets. So I've never seen a food chain that includes this. This says to me that the diagrams that we see of food chains or food webs aren't real. They aren't based on reality. They may have been a part of how the world was at one stage, but the actual food chain, the actual fact that I go to a shop and I could buy a dead cow or a bit of a dead fish or bits of dead pigs or like the menstrual cycle of chickens, all of those things are available, but the food chain diagrams don't include the supermarkets and the shops. And actually, the number of animals that we actually eat is probably like about 10, generally in the UK anyway, compared to the thousands of animals that are out there in the world. So the food chain needs to there needs to be a more accurate picture of the food chain. I don't think there is one, and I don't think it exists, but we need to be accurate when we're talking about these things. And so, as you can see from the trophic level, humans are technically actually below anchovies and above pigs. So when people make the notion that we're top of the food chain, that's not technically true. And if they do believe that, ask them to send you the evidence that we are top of the food chain. And with these points that I'm making today, if anybody has information that says we are top of the food chain, please send it my way, because I'd like to learn the truth if it's out there. I don't believe it is, because there's lots of evidence against it, and also the evidence would have to include a supermarket. But let's just say we are top of the food chain. The reality is that the NHS and the British Dietetics Association have both said that we don't need to eat animal products to survive. So eating animals is a choice. Eating animal products is a choice that we can make as humans. So even if we were top of the food chain, should we still kill these animals, end their lives generally very short? Should we still do that even though we biologically don't need to? I think we shouldn't. But ultimately, you have to make up your own view on it. So from my research, I'm saying that it's false. Humans are not top of the food chain. Next up is a common thing that people say, and that is humans must eat animals for protein. And like I said earlier, the NHS, the British Dietetics Association, and on top of that, the American Dietetics Association and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics all say that you can be a healthy vegan. So they can all explain, and they do explain, that you don't need animal products for protein. So that's the sort of health professional saying it. Anecdotally, I know people who are vegetarians from birth and have never eaten any meat. So how are they still living? How have they got protein? How are they surviving? The reality is that actually a lot of people don't really know what protein is and how it's made, and the fact that there are plants that have protein in. There's lots. Off the top of my head, there's quinoa, there is amaranth, there's buckwheat, soya, tofu, and lots more. Lots of other plants have protein in. But actually, to build protein, what we actually need is amino acids. So the real point about protein is that a lot of people don't know what they're talking about, and they need to really look into protein and look at the fact that, you know, there's millions of vegans on the planet who all don't eat animal products for protein. And also there are lots of health bodies around the world explaining you don't need to eat animal products to survive. So again, this one is false. One thing that comes up is that vegans are all the same. They're all angry, they all think the same, they all say the same, they all act the same, they all do the same things. And this is quite a quick one to explain. They're not all the same. There are certain vegans that do the same things as each other, but there are millions of vegans, and not all of them are the same. Not all of them have the same view on the same things, not all of them get angry at the same things, not all of them react in the same way. What this is just a generalization, and this statement is false.